For this week's summary, Monday I was scheduled with Dr. Copeland, and she had a pretty slow day. Mondays they try to keep lighter loads, just in case there's a bunch of emergencies that they didn't bring in over the weekend, or in case doctors had a lot going on for on-call. So we did have a float and vaccines first thing in the morning. And we went out, and this horse, Dr. Copeland had done an exam on him previously. The people had just gotten him. I think they've only had him for a couple of weeks. But when they got him, he was a little underweight, but nothing too concerning. But then ever since they had him, he wouldn't eat. They have tried grain, they have tried different types of hay, all those kinds of things, and still nothing, and he was dropping weight like crazy. Dr. Copeland said that when she did her exam, she did notice that his tooth kind of had like a hole in it, and she wasn't really sure how far it went up. But with the type of hole, or the way the hole was looking, she really just wanted to go ahead and pull that tooth. So when we were there, we took an x-ray of the mouth to kind of see where the tooth was, where it was at, how things were looking root-wise and whatnot. And then after we pulled the tooth, we took x-rays again to make sure that there weren't any fragments or anything left in there. So she rinsed his mouth out and saw that the hole was pretty bad. It was packed full of hay. It was definitely not pleasant looking. And so we went ahead and pulled that, and she said that on the back side of the tooth, kind of on the side, there was a fracture, so she thinks that could have been a big part of it, but she doesn't think that was the entire cause of the tooth going bad. So here is the tooth. This is what the tooth looked like. There is a very large hole on that tooth. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my camera to focus on it. There it is, this huge hole on this tooth, and it went all the way up into the root, and it just is not pretty, and this is why it was causing him pain. And it was very bulbous, and if I had a tooth that looked like this, I would not want to eat either. So that is what the tooth looks like. And then that day, Dr. Copeland was kind of just in hospital checking on, there was a colic that was in over the weekend, so she was just checking on him, making sure that he was doing good. And then we had a Mustang foal come in. They named her Baby Diamond, and she had a septic joint, and she was overall pretty healthy, and they don't think she got her colostrum or anything like that. They did end up doing plasma on her. And then they ended up taking her to surgery to flush that joint. And, I'm sorry. They flushed the joint and everything like that and got her all bandaged up. And I was kind of helping with other treatments around the hospital, so I was not involved in that first surgery. And by the end of the day, she was up, she was doing good, she was eating, she was a very vibrant little baby. And, like I said, it was a slow day, so basically just whatever treatments were on the whiteboard for the day, every hour, every few hours, that's what we were doing, keeping the hospital clean, doing things like that. And, that was it for that day. And then on Tuesday, I was scheduled with Dr. Sakai, and he had a busy day, but not. Lameness exams, like I've said previously, take a really long time. So one horse can take up 3 hours of a doctor's time or more. It's crazy. So what we did is we went out and we did a few lameness exams on a few horses, and definitely very detailed. So we went out, and this horse just wasn't himself. He was favoring a leg, but he was, you could tell he was limping, but he didn't really care. He was running, he was playing. This woman's children was still riding him, so he wasn't really showing too much pain. He's a very stoic horse. So Dr. Sakai watched him walk, watched him jog, watched him in a circle left and right, watched him just turn in a circle left and right. And then we were doing, he did the hoof testers on him, and definitely did not show anything significant. So he wanted to block him. And I think, like I've said before, when we're doing blocks, we start from the most distal point and then work our way up. He said 80% of the time the problems are in the hoof. So what we did is we blocked the lowest down near the coffin and watched him go again, and definitely improved. He was still not completely as numb as we had liked, so we had to push a little bit more, or a little bit more drugs, and then watched him go again, and he was looking great. So the problem was in the hoof. And Dr. Sakai recommended that the owner bring him into the hospital for radiographs. We were unable to take the DR with us that day. So he recommended her come in, the sooner the better, to take x-rays to kind of see what we were dealing with. So she made an appointment for that. And then when we got back, we did a second surgery on baby Diamond, the foal, and flushed her joints again. And we used midazolam to induce her, and then kept her on SIVO throughout the surgery. And when we flush a joint, they take 14 gauge needles and put them in 4 parts of the joint, so the main pockets, and then they hook it up to this machine. I never got the name of it though. Hooked it up to this machine, and it has this 5-liter bag of fluids, and they plug it into one and they flush the joint. After so many, I think we were going about every 1.5 liters or a liter, depending on what part of the joint, we were flushing fluid through there. That's what we were doing. And then we moved the hose around to each needle and flushed, and it's about a 30-minute procedure, and the whole point of flushing a joint is to flush out the infection. So they had flushed her on Monday, flushed her again on Tuesday, and before they flush anything, they take a sample of that joint fluid, and then they run a CBC on it and a total protein to see how the infection is looking on the cellular level, to see if it is clearing up at all or not, and if these flushes are helping, or if it's just coming back and getting worse, or if it's just not changing at all. So while we were flushing, we took the joint fluid up to the main building, and they ran the labs on it, and it was showing improvement, which was really good. So we finished flushing the joint, and they ended up putting her on an antibiotic, and I can't remember what it was because I wasn't involved with her the previous day, and so I just got to watch the surgery. And so they flushed it, bandaged her up and everything like that. She did have a wound on her front leg too, so while the joint was flushing, they were cleaning up the other wound, but it wasn't affecting the joint at all or anything like that, so that wasn't a big deal. And she recovered great from surgery. And babies are much easier to recover than the bigger horses because they don't fight as much. They just want to lay there and cuddle with you. So that's always fun. And that was all we did for that day. Like I said, it wasn't a very busy day, but it was just for the fact that it took up a bunch of time with those lameness exams and the surgery, just very tedious things. Also, I forgot to mention when we were out with the lameness exams, the one horse just needed kind of overall checkup, and she wasn't shedding out as well as she should have been, so Dr. Sakai was kind of concerned about Cushing's, so we went ahead and drew blood on her to send out to test for Cushing's, and I was able to draw the blood for that, which was nice. And I'm getting my blood draw down pretty dang good. I kind of know where it's at now. I can even stick a horse that's being a little fractious if that's the right word. And so then moving on to Wednesday, I was with Dr. Copeland again, and she had a castration on a 1-year-old's stud colt. So I'm not going to go too much into detail about that because I'm going to use that as my interesting case. Just because I've never seen it before and I've always wanted to, so I'm going to talk about it a little more in detail. And then also for the rest of that day, just in hospital things, Dr. Copeland did have a couple of health cert and Coggins, but there was a lot going on in the hospital. So she doesn't really need an assistant for those things. So she went out and did those things herself. And I stayed in hospital and just kind of helped do treatments. There was a lot of horses there that day. I believe it was close to a full hospital again. So I just stayed in and helped get through treatments and everything like that, fed the babies and all that jazz. And then moving on to Thursday, I was assigned with Dr. Lau, and she seems to have some pretty jam-packed days. Like when she has a day of appointments, she is gone morning to evening. So we did have a full day. But nothing too out crazy. It's just a lot of health checks and just annual things. We did a lot of vaccines and deworming. And there was one house that had 3 horses, and she thought all of their teeth needed to be done. So Dr. Lau checked them, and only one of them needed a float, and it was a younger horse. And so he's still getting used to that. So we had to bump him up on his drugs, and we were almost at his max dose, and he was still giving us a hard time. It's crazy how some of those horses, no matter what you give them, if they don't like it, they're still going to tell you about it. And we went out and did vaccines on some goats as well. And the one, excuse me, Buck needed his horns trimmed. So all they use for that is a giggly wire with a couple handles at the end, and you just saw away back and forth until they pop off, and their horns do have a quick, if you will, for the blood supply, so you have to kind of be careful on where you're at there. You don't want to go too short to cut into that, otherwise it bleeds like a quick nail. And like I said, we probably left at about 9:30, 10 o'clock. Dr. Lau kind of came in a little bit later that morning. She had a dentist appointment. So we probably left around 9:30, 10 o'clock, and we didn't get back till almost 5. And then after that, we just kind of did all the treatments and cleaned the hospital and everything like that. And so I'm kind of just... I'm assigned, but wherever they need me, I'm at. I'm holding horses. I'm helping with x-rays. I'm pulling blood. I'm able to give vaccines with the doctor there. It's been great watching surgeries and kind of seeing how they maintain anesthesia. And one of the technicians told me that hopefully we kind of get some more cases in these next couple of weeks, and it's not so busy, so they can kind of keep me in surgery and kind of show me more in detail of how surgery works and what they like to do for surgeries. And that is all for my 4th week of externship.